Good afternoon. On behalf of Governor Cuomo, I want to welcome everybody here to a very special bill signing for PowerNY. I'd like to, before I get with the program, I'd like to make some acknowledgments. First of all, Howard Fromer, who is the chairman of the IPPNY, the Independent Power Producers of New York. I want to thank Howard for being here, and he'll be speaking shortly. Matthew Arsich, who is the financial secretary of the Heat and Frost Insulators, Local 12, and also representing the building trades. Carol Murphy, executive director, Alliance for Clean Energy, New York. Tim Daniels, chair of the Alliance for Clean Energy, New York. Kenneth Pekowski, who's the senior director, government affairs at the Business Council. And Dave Palmer, executive director, Center for Working Families. And on behalf of Governor Cuomo, again, we want to welcome you all. This is a very, very special bill signing. This is a signing of PowerNY. And PowerNY is going to fulfill the governor's #1 priorities, creating jobs. This is about clean energy. This is about a clean environment and creating jobs throughout New York State. It is also about ensuring that power companies and those who end up buying power, homeowners, are part of this whole job creation situation. One thing I think is really important, I left this morning at 3rd Regional Council meeting. Everywhere you go with the councils, it's about power and it's about jobs. And it also reflects the governor's priorities. This is consistent with everything he is doing since coming into office. He is aligning government. This PowerNY, the process itself is aligning the process, aligning state resources, eliminating bureaucracy, and listening to people, making sure that people have a voice in these decisions. And it is so consistent with what he's doing around the state in all areas, and it segues so much into the whole economic development priority that Governor Cuomo has put forth for New York State. So a very important day for all of us. I'm going to go through a speaking order. I'm going to bring up, first of all, Howard Fromer, who I introduced. He will speak. He'll be followed by Matthew Arsich, then Carol Murphy, and then Carol Murphy will introduce Governor Cuomo. So please welcome Howard Fromer.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and good afternoon. I am Howard Fromer, the Director of Market Policy at PSEG PowerNY and the Chairman of the Independent Power Producers of New York. IPNY is a trade association representing the companies that provide almost 75% of the electric generating capacity in New York, using every major generating fuel. On behalf of IPNY, I thank the Governor for his leadership on reenacting a power plant siting law, and I applaud both the Senate and the Assembly on reaching this agreement. This new law is great news for the people of New York. The power plant siting law is important because it establishes a comprehensive yet streamlined framework for the review of power plant construction applications. Just down the road from here, below the Port of Albany, sits my company's state-of-the-art Bethlehem Energy Center, one of the last power plants to be developed under the previous siting law. It's a 750 megawatt natural gas-fired combined cycle plant that began commercial operation in 2005 and is one of the cleanest plants in New York. The new plant replaced an old 1950s vintage 400 megawatt oil-fired plant. It took a mere 7 months from the time our application was filed until we received a decision from the siting board. And that's the kind of prompt decision-making we can expect under the new law, which is crucial for private companies looking to invest to build a major plant today. It also shows the kind of improvements the state can expect from repowering older, less efficient, and more polluting generation with clean, modern technology. With the signing of this legislation, Governor Cuomo demonstrates his strong commitment to New York's robust energy sector, and we praise him for his work to strengthen the state's power-producing industry. Once again, on behalf of our industry, thank you, Governor, for getting this done. I'd now like to introduce Matthew Arsich, the Financial Secretary for the Heat and Frost Insulators, Local 12.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Arsich. I am the Financial Secretary for the Heat and Frost Insulators of Local 12 in New York City. I'm also here representing the Building Trades Council of both New York City and New York State for Ed Malloy. I want to thank the Governor for the invitation, as well as Ed Malloy for having me attend this particular meeting, and also on the signing of the PowerNY Act of 2011. This law is important to the labor community because investments in clean power will lead to the creation of thousands of jobs across New York. Most importantly, jobs for New Yorkers. The innovative on-bill recovery program will lead to fresh demand for energy retrofits in homes, businesses across the state, and invigorating the many businesses that provide such services as leading to new hiring and job creation. The green energy industry is rapidly growing, and with this law, New York will be the leader in developing new sources of clean power. I thank Governor Cuomo for his leadership, for implementing the policies that allow for new business expansion, and also, most importantly, to create new jobs in New York State for New Yorkers. I'd now like to introduce Carol Murphy, Executive Director of the Alliance for Clean Energy of New York.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Murphy. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Clean Energy New York. I'm joined today by Tim Daniels from Deepwater Wind, who is our board chairman. And I want to thank you for inviting me today to celebrate the signing of this historic legislation. I have hanging on my office wall a pen certificate from July 24th, 1992, when Governor Mario Cuomo signed the Omnibus Energy Act into law. That included the original Article 10 siting process, instituted a state energy master plan, and repealed the so-called 6-cent law. So I look forward to having a matching pen certificate from Governor Andrew Cuomo after he signs this critical energy package. We at ACE New York are dedicated to clean energy, energy efficiency, a healthy environment, and a strong economy for the Empire State. Our members are working in onshore and offshore wind, solar power, hydropower, fuel cells, biomass, energy efficiency. We also have environmental and public interest groups who are part of our organization. Today I commend the legislature for passing the PowerNY Act, Senator Maziarz and Assemblyman Cahill in particular, and the governor for signing a bill that reinvigorates the energy industry while ensuring robust safeguards for our environment. Governor Cuomo has repeatedly emphasized that investment in new power production must uphold New York's strong environmental protections by providing resources for the communities to have a voice in the siting process and a clear, timely path for decision-making. The PowerNY Act recognizes the importance of involving all stakeholders in decisions about new power plant facilities. Further, this law will help New York become a leader in clean energy production and green jobs through on-bill financing for energy efficiency and the NYSERDA study analyzing economic and job creation benefits, as well as the costs of increasing New York's investment in solar energy. We look forward to working with the governor and legislature next year to develop a solar policy that will vault New York ahead of New Jersey and their surrounding states. This is all around a win-win for New Yorkers and shows that New York is indeed open for business. It is now my honor to introduce Governor Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol Murphy, very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those kind words. Matthew Arasich, thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you today as you represent the labor unions. And Harold Fromer, thank you very much for your leadership and your representation on behalf of the independent power producers. Lieutenant Governor, thank you very much for being with us today. Everything has been said, just not everyone has said it at this point in the program. I think the speakers outlined this bill very well. Lieutenant Governor's point about this being key to economic development and job creation. We're talking to regional councils now, as you know, all across the state about how do you generate jobs, and power is key to almost every region's economic development issues, not just the jobs in the power plants themselves, but the power supply for any company that's coming in. The issue keeps coming back and back, over and over. Do we have access to power, and what is the cost of power? So this is essential for us to have gotten this bill passed to fuel, pardon the pun, the economic development efforts that are underway. Second, it's key to protect the environment. This will allow clean energy, it will allow retrofits, it will clean up dirty plants, which we haven't been able to do. The on-bill financing is innovative, is creative, will allow us to provide energy efficiency to homes and businesses that have never had it before. So the on-bill financing is interesting. There's also an environmental justice component. The intervener fund that will provide funding for groups that seek to intervene, quote unquote, in the process to have their communities heard. That's part of this bill. So it's jobs, it's the environment, and it's environmental justice. And I don't think you can do any better than that. The bill is also remarkable in that, Carol pointed out the last time this type of bill was signed in 1992. This bill expired about 8 years ago. And for 8 years, the state just didn't have a law that would allow siting of power facilities. I tell people that, and they say, they must have misheard me. They didn't mishear me. The law expired, and the state just never passed a new law. Well, why didn't it pass the new law? Well, it was complicated to pass a new law, which we understand. But all these issues are complicated. In many ways, it was a manifestation of the dysfunction that was Albany. It wasn't okay that the law wasn't passed. It wasn't okay that it wasn't passed for 1 year. It wasn't okay that it was passed for 2 years, and 3 years, and 4 years, and certainly not for 8 years. So in some ways, I believe the passing of the law, the way the legislature performed here, the way the groups came together and agreed to put aside their particular differences to come together and actually forge an agreement. It's an example of government working. It's an example of New York working. It's an example of people coming together for the greater good. And that should be pointed out today. I want to applaud my partners in the legislature, Senate Leader Dean Skelos, who took a personal interest in this bill and did a great job, George Maziarz, Speaker Silver. They really showed leadership, and as I said, it was a complicated transaction, but we got it done. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, allowing this state to move forward, and this bill will allow this state to move forward. I'd ask our guests today to join us, and I'll sign the bill. Done, my friends. Congratulations. Well done. Did you? So I feel like I come full circle. It's a good piece of work. We'll definitely take a few questions. Okay, any questions? Seeing no questions? Oh. One day I'll get away with that. Michael?
There appears to be a bit of a surplus in energy, so turning to the cost, how much do you think you could reduce the cost of energy for businesses who are looking to come into New York or are already here?
It's going to depend on what we site, what we build, and how well this process works. They may have an estimate, but and if we have one, we'll try to get you one. But I don't know how you could really tell yet, Mike. It's going to depend on how many plants come in, how fast they get built, what the competitive structure is.
Governor, do you think
that signing a bill like this and getting more plants in the pipeline will...
Excuse me one second, Ken, I'm sorry. But Mike, look at the inverse. Without the law, it's very, very hard to increase the supply because nobody wants to come in and try to site a new plant. And it's very, very hard to clean up the old plants and come in with a better, more clean source of energy because you just couldn't get the approval process. It really did terrible damage to the state these past 8 years. And I think it was a drag on the economy. I know it was one of the pieces of evidence that people would point to when they were talking about the dysfunction of Albany and the reputation of the state as being inhospitable to business and just not, quote unquote, getting it. This was one of the pieces of evidence that everybody would cite. I'm sorry, Ken.
Do you think having more of these plants now in the pipeline, maybe in New York City, will help with the arguments in favor of closing Indian Point? Will this bill help toward that argument?
Well, to the extent that one of the arguments on Indian Point is we would need to replace the power, which is true. When you didn't have a siting bill, it bolstered the argument. It's hard to find replacement power if you can't cite replacement power, right? So there was an obvious logical connection there. So to the extent we now can, it's easier to bring in replacement power and additional power, yes. I think that addresses one of the concerns on Indian Point, or tends to alleviate the concern on Indian Point.
How long do you think that would take to replace the power?
Depends. Depends. First of all, Karen, there is already replacement power underway, right? 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts already underway in the planning stages. So, but it would depend.
Governor, is hydropower included in any part of this?
Does this apply to hydropower siting?
Hydropower is largely a federal licensing process, so hydro still goes through a federal process at FERC.
I should go through federal?
It's a federal process largely. This is for state approved plans.
Governor, is there a deadline by which the DEC has to write the regulations? And also, what about the secret process? Isn't that something that places were able to apply for to build power plants through that?
You could build a plant in the past. This makes it faster, easier, more expeditious, and more predictable. We hope to have the process up and running within the year.
Governor, has there been any thought to cutting into utility taxes? I'm thinking in particular the systems benefit charge, which is on every utility bill. It pays for NYSERDA, and I think it's up for renewal this year.
I think about cutting a lot of taxes. I just need the money.
But you need the money for NYSERDA. You think that's a good tax?
Yeah. Well, look, do I think it's a good tax? No. The question was, do I think about cutting taxes? Yes, I think about cutting taxes, utility taxes, income taxes, property taxes. But it takes money to cut taxes, right? That gets back to balancing the budget, and that's the problem.
Yeah, just follow up. On a lot of the projects I believe that are in the pipeline are wind farm projects. Will this bring a lot more of those online, create a lot more of those?
If a plan is approved, Mike, then they wouldn't come into this process. If they're not yet approved and they're planning and they would opt into this process, then it could be helpful, yes.
But Governor, haven't a lot of those projects been blocked by local communities, and would this bill somehow help, get those projects moving forward?
Well, if a project has been already voted on and denied, this wouldn't help, obviously. But going forward, local governments, local communities have a voice in the process. There's roughly seven members on the committee, 5 of state agencies, 2 are local government appointees. And we have what they call the intervener fund. It's actually a fund that can help local communities to intervene in the process. So, and there is no doubt, just to take a step back, there's no doubt that these are often controversial decisions, right? I want to build a power plant at X location. There's likely to be an alternative view. There's likely to be opposition. How do you have both sides heard in a fair process, but yet an expeditious process that actually concludes at one point, right? Because just because you have some opposition to a proposal shouldn't mean de facto that the proposal stops. And that's why this entire situation has been somewhat controversial. We have a process that will make a decision. It will make sure all sides are heard. Will make sure the information is on the table. The intervenor fund says even if you don't have the resources to participate in the process, we'll help find the financial resources so you can participate in the process. It doesn't mean that because we now have the law, the opposition is going to go away or the controversy is going to go away. It's not. These are by definition, in their very nature, controversial, often controversial propositions. Not always, but often. And it will accelerate and expedite the decision making.
Governor, does the Article 10 law make it easier to possibly replace Indian Point if it indeed closes?
I think that was basically Ken's question, right? One of the arguments against closing Indian Point is you would need to find the replacement power, right? You have a range of estimates, but that, let's say Indian Point is 15% of the power at peak for New York City. Where would you find the 15%? You'd have to replace Indian Point, and since the state had no siting law, how could you ever find replacement power since you can't site a new plant or refit an old plant because there was no siting law? To the extent there is now a siting law, it would tend to alleviate that issue and that concern, because now you have a siting law, you can site power facilities which could theoretically be used to find replacement power.
Governor, could you talk about, right now, CSEA is voting on the proposed tentative contract. The PEP is set to vote maybe starting later this month. What would you do if either or both of these contracts are voted down?
We will do what we said we were going to do.
Which
is what you would have done if you didn't have an agreement with the union.
So is it a guarantee that if these contracts fail, there will be layoffs?
Is there a guarantee? There are no guarantees in life, Jimmy. Have we said from day one when we did the budget that we have to find $450 million in savings and that we would either have to reduce personnel or have an agreement with the union? We've said that probably 20 times in this room. I've said it to you probably 20 times. Nothing has changed between the time I said it to you and today. Those are still the options.
How long might that take? Would it be immediate? Would it be before the end of the fiscal year? And will there have to be more layoffs because we've delayed through the fiscal year?
I don't know that there would be more layoffs. We would implement what we said we would implement.
Governor, you mentioned that you don't cut taxes, but you need the money. Is there concern on your part, or have you done an analysis yet of what the impact of this new federal deal will mean for the states?
Not yet, Ken. We're looking at it, but really you need more information, in my opinion. And, you know, they talk about the special committee or the super committee, or they have all sorts of names for it. If, by chance, the committee doesn't come to a mutual agreement, and they then go to the triggers, what does that mean? And that's, I do think we need some more information. And I think the committee has to act. We probably have to get further down the road to determine exactly what the consequences would be to the state, if any, by the way.
Governor, have you been brought up to date on the high-speed rail?
In terms of what?
In terms of whether, for example, some of the states have said that they did not want the money. Have you heard anything more?
We have said on a number of occasions, any state that doesn't want money, we want the money. We're going to get a billboard. I'm going to put that up as a billboard, I think. If you don't want the money, send it here. We will take the money. We actually have had some success. Some states have said early on that they weren't interested in the money. We applied, and we actually received hundreds of millions of dollars, I think partially because other states turned it down, and we expressed a desire to participate. And we'll continue to do that.
One of the more obscure state entities is the Hudson River Black River Regulating District, which is responsible for regulating the flow of the Hudson River by controlling the Great Sac and Dagger Lake. They are currently under order by a judge in Fulton County to pay money that they have sequestered in the Black River regulating part of their entity to cover payments that have been made for 2 years, were to have been made for 2 years to Northville, Mayfield, and Broadalbin First School Districts, total of about $1.7 million. Are you okay with the Black River Regulating District money being used to pay the Hudson River Regulating District portion of this? And if you're not okay, should the state somehow, in some other way, be making up these payments to these school districts?
Can you repeat the question, please? I'd have to look at the specifics. I'm not familiar with the specifics. I'd have to look at the specifics. If they're under a court order, you know, they should follow the court order and follow the law. But let me look at the specifics, and I'll get back to you on it.
You and your financial advisors about the state of the national economy and the developments just as recently as a few minutes ago in the stock market with a near 300-point drop, especially in light of the claims that the agreement to lift the federal borrowing cap was supposed to strengthen the economy, not apparently as it has, maybe weakened it.
Obviously, like every American, Fred, I think I'm significantly concerned. You know, the first few months, the economy was going well. The economy was going well in the state. I think there are indicators, even as of today, that people are feeling good about the state, and they're feeling good about the trajectory of the state and the economy of the state. The revenue reports for the state over the first few months were positive. The controller pointed that out. Department Division of the Budget, same thing. The revenue forecasts were actually ahead of schedule. I am concerned that there's recent evidence, both numbers on the economy as well as the political front, that may change that trajectory. We don't know. Maybe this is an immediate reaction to the uncertainty that Washington went through. That's possible. But we're going to have to wait and see. But is it cause for concern? It is certainly cause for concern.
Follow-up then, do you have confidence in President Obama's fiscal course right now? Do you think the administration's policies are doing what they should be doing?
I think the episode, if you will, in Washington about the debt ceiling, I do not think that was helpful. The best news is it could have been worse. A default would have really, I think, wreaked havoc with the economy. So to the extent we didn't default, I think that's the good news in this situation. But I think it was disruptive, there's no doubt, and we're going to have to wait and see what the consequences of that turn out to be.
Do you think it was responsible for Senator Gillibrand to vote against that debt ceiling?
I think she, you know, we elected the people of the state, elect a representative to vote their conscience, and if that's her opinion and that's what she thought, fine. I don't think just because she didn't agree with the other Democrats, I don't think that in and of itself is a bad thing. You know, I say all across the state, when it comes talking about the state legislature, I said, you know, one of the things that worked this year is I think people didn't just vote party lines, right? You're not Democrats, you're not Republicans, you're New Yorkers first. I said that to the state legislature. I think that's true in Washington also. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're Americans, and they're there to vote what they believe is in the best interest of the people of their state, and that's what they should do.
The LabCorp panel met in Albany today. Are there any circumstances under which you would approve their eventual product?
Are there any circumstances? You know, it's sort of wide net, Casey. I have said from day one that I believe the redistricting lines should be the product of an independent process. and should not be partisan. I don't think I could have been clearer on that from day one. I said it in the campaign, I wrote it in books, I said it in speeches, and I've repeated it since.
What's your reaction to them saying that they're now going to follow the prison counting law that was passed in the budget?
I think following the law is usually a good thing.
I didn't hear your answer to my question about whether or not you had faith in the Obama administration's economic policy.
Fred, I'm an optimist. I have faith. I believe the economy is going to get better, and I believe when we look back in a few months, this Washington episode will have been a blip.
An idea has been floated that you privately would like to see the president lose to bolster your own 2016 chances.
What does that mean, Ken? It's privately been floated. Does that mean you wrote it? Is that what that means? Is that a euphemism for, or you had a source? Is that what that means? I think I was at an event for President Obama last night, as a matter of fact. I believe he should be the next president of the United States. He should be reelected, and I believe he will be reelected.
On that, early on in the debt crisis, you were saying they'll come to a resolution. Other governors in other states were preparing lists. I mean, we talked to people about this, cutting National Guard and stuff, but you kept saying they'll come to a resolution.
Because I'm the optimist, Mike. Go ahead.
Well, no, actually, no, at the risk
And
of,
prophetic, by the way, in that case.
At the risk of pleasing you with this question,
It can happen once a month, try.
you kept saying that right along, that there'd be a resolution. So you had a different mindset than it appeared in Washington. Does it appear that Washington is starting to act the way you're saying Albany used to?
Good question. Except Albany, that analysis Albany was worse even by that analysis, Mike, right? Because by that analysis, I would have said Albany will get the budget done in past years. Albany will get the budget done the night before April 1, right? The night before the deadline. Because sometimes the political process needs the deadline to conclude. So a legislative leader can go back to their conference and say, I tried everything, but look at the clock on the wall. It's almost midnight. It's over, so we have to decide. So sometimes the deadline can actually assist the political decision-making process. However, in years past, that didn't work in Albany, right? The deadline came and went repeatedly. So Albany would not have followed that. But what I was saying about Washington is I believe the deadline was going to drive a conclusion. And I believe the deadline did drive a conclusion.
You know, it's on the road to becoming what Albany was?
I wouldn't say that about Washington. It was pretty bad, Mike. It was pretty bad.
You said it's disruptive, though. You think that what happened was disruptive. What is your view of the overall deal that came out of it?
I think the best thing you can say is that there was not a default, and I think that was everything, Ken. It was disruptive because the whole world watched what was less than a flattering political process, right? The people of this country watched what was less than a flattering political process. And I think to the extent you want to have confidence in the government, and confidence in the government does transfer to a degree towards confidence in the private sector, it obviously wasn't helpful. I feel it in this state. We're feeling it over the past 6 months. All those years of a dysfunctional government in Albany, I believe, hurt the private sector and hurt the business community in this state and hurt this state's economic future. I also believe the inverse is true, that we've had a good 6 months. Not saying it's going to last forever, but we had a good session this session. I think that's also communicated. And I think people are more optimistic. And one of the factors I watch in the economy, I'm not an economist, as you know, but if you have to pick one factor, it's consumer confidence. And you watch that consumer confidence index, because when consumer confidence is up, it means they're spending. And that's when people buy homes and they do extensions and they take a trip and they buy a car when they're feeling confident. That consumer confidence drops, it's a totally different situation. And where does consumer confidence come from? It's in the ether. It's what people are reading in the newspaper, it's what they're seeing on the news, it's what their neighbor is saying to them. And this situation in Washington, I think, affected consumer confidence, obviously to the negative. And that hurts the economy.
But did the president, in your opinion, show the necessary leadership in this case?
Well, look, there was ultimately the leadership stopped a default. And to me, that was everything. That would have been, you know, the car going off the cliff. Now, was it survivable? Of course, you know. Anything is survivable just about, right? It's like Casey's question, could there be any circumstances, you know? But it would have really damaged the economy of this nation, and I think, thanks in part to the president's leadership, that was avoided.
Governor, back to the LAT4 and the prison counting law, that's being challenged right now by some Senate Republicans, partly on the grounds that it was a policy measure inserted into the budget. What are your thoughts on
But then you have to get a court to say that. You know, there is a law. Well, I don't think the law is a good law. I feel that way about a lot of laws, frankly. But the law is the law, you follow the law, or you change the law, or you overturn the law. But the law is the law, and you follow the law.
Do you feel that is a good law?
Do I feel what? I'm sorry.
That the counting prisoners where they're from, as opposed to where they're incarcerated, is a good law?
Well, I said, even before I was Attorney General, Eric, I said and I wrote that I didn't think it was right or fair that you were counting prisoners in the prison district. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.